Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the comics podcast relating to G.I. Joe, pertaining to matters thereof, and also home of, let me just check some recent reviews, home of bloody insufferable jingles. Are you bored on the 4th of July? Then thank you for joining us live. Today we will be looking at G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 318, released at time of recording 2 days ago, Wednesday, 2nd of July, 2025. The synopsis: G.I. Joe ninjas versus Cobra mutants, Storm Shadow and Dawn fight through Cobra's monstrous forces in search of vital intel. But Cobra Commander is always one step ahead, or is he? Well, that was the synopsis at time of advertising this issue. How did it actually pan out? We shall find out. And finding out with me, as always, will be my Real American co-host. He's got his Stars and Stripes t-shirt on today because it is 4th of July. It's Real American Tim.
Hello.
We changed.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners. Well, I've got red stripes behind me, wearing a blue shirt.
You put that eagle in another room.
And a white shirt. Yes, all of my eagles are in another room.
Hello to everyone watching and commenting live. Hello, Frank. Hello, Matthew. Afternoon. Did you see my action figure cover with Storm Shadow and Jinx? Oh, have I seen that one yet? I don't think I have seen it yet.
No, but we did enjoy your action figure cover in this issue of G.I. Joe that we're talking about. Is that a spoiler?
Good to see DFW Tim
and Matthew. Good to see you.
Ping me a message, Matthew. I don't recall seeing your recreation of the very latest cover. And look, it's also Infinite Entertainment. Hello, lads. Thanks for all the Joe Fest content. Was cool seeing the floor and whatnot. The Hama interview was great. That was posted for everyone yesterday. If you weren't on the floor watching it live, I felt like a kid listening to it. Fantastic.
Mark, since you and I last did a regular episode where you were sitting at home and I was sitting at home and we were not sitting next to each other at a G.I. Joe convention, how many episodes or clips have you posted to YouTube and maybe our other venues from Talking Joe's coverage of panels or walkthroughs at Joe Fest? And how shocked were you by the amazing number of views that those video clips have had? And can I make this sentence any longer before I finish it?
Yeah, it was quite a few. I would need to go back and double check, but I think closer to 10 than 0. We did. I did a little tour of the Action Force International Heroes guys room. I went to Top Dog Comics. I did a tour of the floor of the show floor of the Joe Fest Con. I did a stream of the Super 7 panel, the Operation Recall panel, our panel, and I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff because there was probably lots more. But yes, so a good few Joe Fest related bits of content that I posted out. And it's also fun seeing the response from those different videos, because sometimes I might spend months trying to book a guest, spend many hours doing the research, reading back up on their work, thinking about some intelligent questions, doing the actual interview itself, spending many hours in cutting it together, and then a handful of people watch it. Or I'll just go, I'm wondering about the show floor. Maybe I just record some of this and put it on and see if people watch it. And that becomes my biggest watched video of close to all time.
Or by many times bigger than the average or median viewership of a Talking Joe video. Do you want to say anything else about Joe Fest, which was a few weeks ago in Augusta, Georgia? Should we talk generally about G.I. Joe news?
So I did bring my sketchbook along to Joe Fest in Georgia, and this year I got 2 sketches. I wasn't able to get the Hama sketch in my book that I hoped, but I did get a Mark Pennington Alley Viper sketch.
Folks, if you're just listening, this is black and white and gray. The Alley Viper is sort of in a defense stance, holding its shield. Pennington has drawn the Alley Viper shield 2 times larger than normal. It's casting a shadow on the Alley Viper.
They've made it from the 2 up.
There's some Saw Viper humor for you. Deep cut, Mark. That was great. The Alley Viper in its left hand is holding a small crossbow, which kind of looks like Scarlet's crossbow. And there's some sort of smoke around. Very cool inked drawing. I think that's more than a convention sketch. And then who's your second one from?
Adam Riches. Adam Riches, who is a Cobra Royal Guard enthusiast. I believe he's got a collection of about 300 of the figures. So naturally, I asked him to draw that.
This drawing is also ink with some gray Copic markers. The Royal Guard is sort of floating down in front of us, kind of lunging at us. Its cape is billowing. It's got its crazy scimitar above its head. In the background are some mountains, which recall the Himalayas.
The Himalayas, yeah.
So is this? Should we do like a 2-sentence post-mortem or recap of Joe Fest? We have a whole issue to get to. So, and at that very convention, actually, folks, I was commenting to Mark how even when we do a single issue, we can still talk for 2 hours and 10 minutes. And sometimes at minute 45, we're still doing intro and talking about covers. And you're all very patient with us. Or maybe you're just dropping off halfway through an episode because they don't need to be this long. So in the spirit of making our episode long like normal, Mark, is there anything else you want to say about our time at Joe Fest?
Well, I mean, it's always nice seeing you in person, Tim, because we have these conversations at least once a week. Well, yeah, let's say on average once a week. And
about how long the episodes are?
So we talk for 10 hours each week. And then, sporadically, we see each other in person. So over the last couple of years, we've now seen each other 4 times in person. So it's that's always a highlight for me. It was cool to get to meet Mr. Hama again and do that panel. I think just in terms of the podcast, it's nice that it has a enough gravitas that we can carry off something like that it doesn't seem like an unreasonable thing for us to be doing. And then just I think that I spent way too much money buying things that I don't really need, but aside from that, it's also sort of cool to see all of these people that we see online and interact with in a real world environment. It's real life humans.
Yes, I will second that. It's very nice to see you for real in person. It was never a given that we would get along when you invited me to join the show, and what a nice surprise we do, but also in person. And having gone to many conventions by myself and always having a good time, it is a richer experience to know that my friend from work is going to be there. And it feels special because my friend from work is flying all the way across the Atlantic Ocean and then driving 3 hours from a different airport and bringing some friends along. So it feels a little exotic and sort of rare. And a G.I. Joe convention already feels a little rare. And then, as you said, Folks, we were technically guests of the convention both this year and last year. We didn't have attendee badges, we had guest badges. And we were definitely not the most important guests, but we were given a table where we could camp out, and we volunteered to, and then got to moderate a panel. We got to interview a guy whose work we both like and who we have interviewed before. So we thought we could do a good job. And that is an episode you can go watch or listen to. And it is very nice to meet people who listen to the show, whether we have said hello once before at a Joe convention or not. And it's always nice when someone comes up and not only says that they like the show, but they introduce themselves. Because I am not face blind, but I don't always know what people look like. So it's nice if someone says, I'm so-and-so, I listen to the show. And then I can start to connect that name with like the Facebook font of their name if they comment in the Facebook group. And then before I could fully recover from this G.I. Joe convention, I went to another one. And I won't... Matthew Matson says, Tim was sketching the panels at DFW. That was pretty cool. I think I only drew one of them. It's not the best drawing, but that's what a sketchbook is for. A sketchbook is to draw well and badly. Folks, if you would like to read 12,000 words about my experience at Joe Fest, head to my blog right now, arealamericanbook.com. I've posted the first 2 parts out of 4. Maybe by the time you listen to this, if you're on a regular cycle, all of it will be up there. And then I'm immediately getting to posting my, let's say, 4-part convention report about the DFW show. That stands for Dallas Fort Worth, because it was near the DFW airport, and it was run by the DFW Club and Greg Brown. And that was a smaller show, but equally excellent. And it's amazing to come out of such a concentrated 9 days. This sort of feels like the month of silent missions, where every day I had to do something about G.I. Joe. Like, I got to read this issue, or we're recording an episode, or we're doing an extra one because you're doing an interview, and then the next one comes out and I got to read it. It's like, well, is Mark sending me the PDF for the next one because we're interviewing this person before the issue comes out? Whereas this was many people and much shopping and window shopping and a little bit of flying and airports and hotels and comics. So
that's
to start the episode. And yes.
Just going to move on to some somewhat sad news. So we heard this week that Jim Shooter, former Marvel editor-in-chief, who we spoke to on the show, had sadly passed away just recently. And so I just thought, given our connection to Jim and the very generous amount of time that he's spent with us recording an episode, going into vast details of the origins of G.I. Joe at Marvel Comics, just to note his passing, and what a sad moment, and it's been very interesting sort of seeing a lot of those memories being shared from various creatives in the industry, but also just the incredible huge amount of fan community that have met him from his many appearances and cons. And sort of one of the reoccurring themes is that how generous he's been with his time, and just sitting down and talking with people about all of the history of the comics that he's worked on over time.
Folks, you think that Mark and I can fill 2 hours easily doing an episode of Talking Joe? I say this with admiration. I'm not cracking a joke. Our Jim Shooter episode, we went past 3 hours, and Mark and I were the ones who were sort of going to call it. And I think Mr. Shooter was happy to keep going. I think in his more recent years, he was on his blog, he had said, someone said I should write a book, an autobiography. And I don't know that I'll do that, but this is like 10 years ago. I'll write some blog posts about things that I've done. And I think in these last 10, 15 years, Shooter has been interested in in his legacy, or sort of telling all of his stories from his point of view. And it's interesting because that it's his point of view, and there are many, many people who crossed his paths professionally who have different takes. And in my very cursory reading of some remembrances the last few days, I have noted that people who liked him have been posting. People who had a complicated relationship have been posting kind things and acknowledging he was a complicated person. And I have not seen any postings from people who had for many years not liked Jim Shooter. And maybe that's the polite thing to do, the week after someone dies. But as Mark says, it's really cool to have a long interview with him where we could just talk Marvel in the 80s and G.I. Joe. If you were new to the show, go listen to that episode. It's great.
On screen is Bill Sienkiewicz's illustration of Jim Shooter, which he often does sort of a remembrance portrait when someone has passed away, and this one is clearly someone a little bit closer to him. He did a portrait of Jim Shooter from the neck down to his feet that hung on Jim's wall, sort of in celebration of his infamous height. And Larry Hama, of course, also shared some memories of Jim.
Oh wait, go back. Speaking of G.I. Joe, that's Mike Zeck in the middle. Okay. I didn't record a song for this one, Tim, and it's not that I've been broken by the waves of negative comment, but but simply just didn't run out of time. Sort of ran out of time a little bit because it was quite condensed recording schedule for this one. But also, I think this will bear out in our discussion. I was a little less inspired by this issue in terms of getting a nugget that I wanted to that sort of needled away at me that felt like it needed to be made into a song, which is often how it works. I'll get an idea, it'll sort of be in the back of my head for a little while, and then I'll turn it into a little sort of parody song or something. And nothing inspired me this month, unfortunately. I have a comment. I have a thematic comment that follows on from that, which will be my top-down overview observation of the issue. Do you want to do credits and
should we?
Covers
let's
first?
get to that in a bit then. So credits. This issue was brought to us, as always, by writer Larry Hama, penciler Paul Peleteier, inker Tony Kordos, colorist Francesco Segala, with Sabrina del Grosso the flatter. Like Pliny the Elder, Sabrina del Grosso the flatter, letterer Pat Brousseau, editor Alex Antone, rhymes with phone, publication design Jillian Crabb, production design Richard Mercado, and creative consultant is Diana Davis.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to interrupt this for a second because I might forget before the episode is over. Since we're doing a live episode and we've been talking about previous episodes, folks, remember the prop store auction of G.I. Joe costumes and props from the 3 live action films, Rise of Cobra, Retaliation, and Snake Eyes. That auction, that online auction, which is at propstore.com/G.I. Joe. I'm saying this on July 4th. That runs through July 7th. So if you want to bid on a Snake Eyes jacket or a DNA testing light up lipstick prop or a ninja costume or a Snake Eyes costume or a wooden crate or some Barking Fridge says, shh, I haven't bid yet. So folks, and when we spoke to friend of the show, Shane Simek, wait, right, Shane?
He is a friend of the show, but I don't know what you're about to say, Tim.
Sorry. This auction, all the starting bids are a low $100, and certainly some of them by now have gone a little higher than that. But if you're thinking I couldn't possibly afford a costume from this auction, that a real life piece of clothing that was in a movie, that may not be true. Okay. All right, let's talk about this. Infinite Entertainment says, I forgot the Snake Eyes movie existed. And the toy department, is saying, shout out from Ohio. Hello, the toy department. I know some of you.
which toy from the department are you? Yeah, shout out back from our respective locations.
Okay, let's talk about this comic.
Let's talk about the comic, and the next part of the show is...
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Okay, cover A is drawn by Andy Kubert and colored by Laura Martin. It's Storm Shadow and Don Marino in the sewers, with swords attacking several Cobra soldiers. They are in the Andy Kubert slightly beefed up, sort of inspired by the Classified figure designs. Two of them have been slashed. One is being tossed aside. Storm Shadow has both swords out and both of his arms are straight, one in front of him, one behind him. Dawn is lunging. The other Cobras are sort of down in the water, firing and missing. The background is all a muted pasty green, and then the inking in Kubert's composition behind the two Joes is a very dominant circle because of the shape of these sewer tunnels, and then in the distance is another circle and another circle. So you get the sense that this whole tunnel is circular, not rectangular like a hallway, or hexagonal like on the Starship Enterprise. The top third of the cover, there's a lot more inking. There's a lot of black in those bricks. So this sewer system feels very old. And then way in the top, there are some pipes. Kubert does that standard convention where when there is an attacking force in the foreground heading away from us towards our hero or heroes, oftentimes someone, a goblin, a barbarian, is sort of turned. I'll mime it. I'll mime it for the people watching on video, like this, looking back at us. But in this case, this Cobra soldier is about to die and is clutching himself sort of underneath the water, and we just see one wide eye in shock and surprise as he takes his last breath. And maybe continuing his step forward, Storm Shadow's going to push that Cobra soldier's face underwater. Very cool cover. The angle and the foreshortening on Storm Shadow is something we've never quite seen in a G.I. Joe cover, the way that his legs are overlapping and his torso is aiming away from us, but it's still quite powerful and fun.
I forgot to get the cover B up on the screen, but
that's okay. It's black and white.
I do have this.
Oh, okay. So here's Matthew Matson's action figure recreation of this cover with toy photography, where we have Storm Shadow coming at us and Jinx behind him, and a bunch of classified. These are all classified figures. Classified Cobra soldiers all on the bottom getting stepped on and knocked away with swords. Matson here has replaced the sewer environment and the green light with a sort of Cobra headquarters tech background and some blue and red light. Lots of fun. Maybe if you keep sending this in every month, you can become a regular feature in the letters page. Okay, cover C. So cover B is Kubert's work, inks only, no colors. We're not looking at it right now, but it's awesome. Cover C is drawn by Francis Portella and colored by, and there's very little color on this one. This is one of these, quote, camouflage covers. This is the 1:10 ratio variant. It's Storm Shadow. He is leaning to his left. His left shoulder is much lower than his right shoulder. There's a really strong diagonal across his shoulders. He's holding both swords. He's got all these dominant black straps and a black sash for his belt with a pair of nunchucks. And as is standard for these camouflage covers, not all of the outline edge lines are drawn in. So the white of his head, the white of his legs becomes the white of the background. So it's like he's camouflage. Very cool. I don't know if IDW wants to publish a like a book of portfolio prints, but these Portella 1 in 10 variant covers would make a very cool one because they're, each one's a big block of color. Mark is muted, so I will say that Greg Augustin says that's awesome. Even removed the Cobra sigil. So is that to
talking about Matt's diorama? He's got where he removed the Cobra sigil from Storm Shadow, unlike Francis Portella, who left the Cobra sigil in.
That's okay. As I said in a previous episode, I think this costume looks better with something on the chest. Cover D is drawn by Tiago da Silva. Is this a store exclusive, Mark?
This is a store exclusive from 616 Comics, and it's unusual that there is a left and a right version of the comic. I believe this is two separate comics, one with a left-hand image of Snake Eyes and a right-hand image, which when joined together form a single image of Snake Eyes jumping through the night, framed by the moon in the background.
This is that style that looks very sort of photorealistic and CG. It looks like a modern video game cutscene. It looks a little bit like a live action photograph, but sort of at all the edges, there's just a little vibration in the color, which both sort of shows that the character is moving. I'm not talking about the blur effect. And also to me says computer, as opposed to a black outline where I think someone has drawn this, like one line at a time. The rendering here is supposed to be photorealistic, even down to the textures on Snake Eyes' costume. This is a very smart or cynical scheme to get people to buy not one but two different variant covers. Draw one image, and maybe it's twice as big as normal. Draw one image and cut it in half, and then you've got two variant covers. And so maybe people want to get both so they can put them together.
And the next variant is by David Diaz from Eastside Comics, and the subject of the cover is, oh look, it's the Baroness Tim. And here is an extra special jingle just for this week, given that this is the first show after Joe Fest.
Okay, if you've been reading G.I. Joe, you might have noticed there's quite a few covers of Baroness. So this is something about that. Why are there so many covers of Baroness? Cause she's on the other side. Cobra are villains. My only conclusion, the costume makes us wide-eyed. So we've been shown, and some people think she is fit, though it is wrong blatantly. Someday we'll complete it, the cover collection, the Baroness, her leather, and me.
That is a one-time sharing of that video, and then it will be destroyed. As I say, Check's Notes, the home of bloody, insufferable jingles. We're claiming that title. We're owning it.
So, folks, before the show, me knowing that there would be karaoke at Joe Fest, because there was the previous 2 years, jokingly, but also seriously, I was encouraging before the show and then at the show, Mark to do a song at karaoke. And hey, why not sing along with one of his pre-recorded jingles, which Mark had previously made for this show, and it was great. Okay, so Mark, this David Diaz cover of the Baroness sitting on a railing in front of some buildings that are smoking like they're on fire. What store?
Smoking like the Baroness.
They're covered in leather like the Baroness. Where can one get this cover?
This one is Eastside Comics.
Okay. So the lighting here is daytime, and the rendering is much softer than say the previous one that we looked at. Even though there are sort of hard edges around Baroness, the actual rendering, I assume this certainly is digital, but to me it looks like it was drawn with pastel as opposed to paint or colored pencil or ink. And that's a cool gun. I don't know if it's a real gun. The Baroness is not in this issue. Oh wait, no. Baroness
she
is
briefly,
on
isn't
one
she?
page. The Baroness is in 3 panels this issue. So yes, technically, sure, have her on a cover.
Sure, why not? It's
Mark,
a less exciting Baroness cover, let's just say. I think just having her standing there or sitting there, particularly when it's unrelated to the issue, or just not an exciting storytelling pose, I'd say, is less interesting to see.
Also, the connection between what she's doing and what's behind her is unclear. I feel like if she was holding a remote control device or had some sticks of dynamite, then we could make a connection to these buildings that are smoking behind her. But we're cropped so closely to her that this one building is smoking feels like an afterthought. And I don't get the sense that there's sort of pandemonium in the streets, or other bombs about to go off, or emergency vehicles showing up. So I feel like the foreground and the background of this image haven't been reconciled. Mark, in the inside front cover of this issue, there was one more name, Suspiria Vilches.
Who does another variant cover or 2. This is an exclusive for Big Clutch, which was available briefly online as a sort of early access, and will be an SDCC San Diego Comic Con exclusive from, I believe, the Big Clutch stand, booth, whatever it is that they've got. It's one of Baroness and one of Scarlet, so sort of face/torso plus a sort of a zoomed out shot of both of those two characters as well, and sort of a slightly more artsy, impressionistic kind of take rather than the kind of cover that we just saw from David Diaz. I'm reminded a little bit of the work of Tula Lotte, if you're aware of that name, who does a lot of covers as well.
Both of these feel like they are somewhat inspired by movie posters of the 1970s and 80s. There's very painterly vertical brush strokes around the characters, sort of vertical streaks of color, and then sort of a burst on the bottom of the Scarlet one. And in that, Bob Peak, Star Trek, the motion picture movie poster kind of way, and plenty of his other posters. These are both montages with characters repeating, sort of heads prominent. Okay.
Cool. So I think we're ready to get into... I thought we were ready to get into the issue itself, but Diana asks an important question: why is Scarlet artistically farting on Snake Eyes, causing devastation? It's the important questions to be asking.
All right. So for those of you just listening, I think what Diana Davis is reacting to is the composition where Scarlet's standing in profile, but twisting her lower torso a little bit so we can see her butt, which is a comic book thing that women do on covers. And then in this montage, below and to the right of her butt is a yellow painterly explosion with a rattler coming out of it, and also Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes and the rattler, I don't think, are in the same physical space. Again, this is a montage. And one might look at this
She's
and
not
say,
giant.
Right. One might look at this and say, oh, there's an explosion right below and next to Scarlet's butt. So that must be an anatomical function.
Right.
And now that
Okay.
I've seen that, I can never unsee it.
Right. Now, so we're now moving into spoilery territory. So if you haven't yet read this issue and you want to remain unspoiled, now is the time to pause and come back at a later point. Henceforth, we are all go. Right.
Plot breakdown.
In the storm drains beneath Springfield, Storm Shadow and Dawn are on a recce. They encounter and take out a cyborg mutant trooper who still has a bit of juice left in him despite the previous brain bomb detonating. The Pit Command Center is also keeping tabs on Cobra Island recon team of Multo and Helix, who have been tasked with getting inside the Cobra Casino to obtain a physical paper trail of the casino guests' details. Alpha, the holographic avatar of Alpha 001, is seeing off more guests, but another patron glitches out. Multo and Helix take this opportunity to disguise themselves as the guest and a blue ninja, while elsewhere on the island, Mindbender returns with Serpentor on ice. At Springfield, the ninjas eavesdrop on Cobra's still loyal to Cobra Commander, and they reveal plans to help him escape, a plan that he enacts as he vacates Destro's Scottish castle with the help of hidden explosives. Destro is all too aware of the escape as he prepares to use the neural trigger he had implanted on Cobra Commander's brain. And finally, at the Springfield Library, Monty, the annoying neighbor kid, looks to put the moves on Nina, who he does not realize is Jinx in disguise. But as he knocks off her glasses, he exclaims, "You're not Nina! Has her cover been blown? Dun, dun, dun!"
Okay, Mark, you said at the beginning of the episode, nothing about this issue particularly jumped out at you to give you an idea to write a jingle, a parody song. And I think what you're reacting to is that all of the scenes in this issue have sort of an equal weight in import and in duration, and there isn't any one plot of the 3 or 4 subplots that for me feels like the definite A plot right now. They all feel like sort of equally of equal import, and that is not a criticism. Sometimes I talk about how some issues of G.I. Joe feel like the beginning of something, some feel like the end, some feel like transition issues, which is a really imperfect term. And this feels like a transition issue. Viewer Squishy says, Scotland, Cobra Island, Springfield threads all perfectly balanced this month. And so...
And also with the pit hub in the middle.
Yes. And even though each of these, Storm Shadow and Jinx with swords kill some bad guys. And Wetsuit and Multo. Multo and Helix take out 2 blue ninja robots, right? A cyborg and an enhanced blue ninja. And these are both very cool scenes with, decapitations and robots screaming, "Scree!" right? And then there's a really neat sort of wrinkle in this development of the Destro and Cobra Commander relationship in the sort of Springfield who's in charge relationship. And so these things are all exciting and I like them, but no one of them feels like the thing that gets more pages or has sort of the most exciting moment. And so I think in a very reasonable way, no one thing jumps out at either of us from this issue as sort of the primary thing, while everything else sort of sinks a step down. They're all, equally weighted.
I think perhaps though that panel that you were, or the page that you were pointing out with Multo and Helix is possibly the one that has the biggest kind of eyebrow raise moment to it. Is that bit of the silenced pistol just right through the old noggin of this OAP robot thing. I'm not entirely sure if it's completely clear to us exactly what these pensioners are, as to how much of them are human versus how much of them are entirely replaced by robot. Because when Helix does go to rip off that whatever the face mask covering, and it's a kind of metallic robot skull thing that is sort of exposed underneath.
Yeah, she says no plate, just a rubber mask. But Molto does call it a cyborg, and so I think we take
so
this.
Cyborg implies combination, right?
Yes. So I don't know if this is 90-10 or 50-50, but I'm taking this as, most of the neck down is still organic, but for purposes of making this comic acceptable, when one of the Joes shoots it in the head, it's not a red liquid that sprays out. It's, black or white or brown or purple. And don't forget, after that exciting panel that you just showed a close-up of when Malto does shoot the cyborg in the head, one panel before, Malto with a machete decapitates a blue ninja, and one of these sort of more advanced blue ninjas that I think
was previously impossible to destroy.
Yes, and is holding a lightsaber. And this is that Chris Mooneyham design, right? Didn't this get sort of drawn for the first time in issue 301? And at the time, we sort of thought that Chris Mooneyham was just drawing what he wanted, and that maybe the script didn't necessarily call for a new design. But now that we've seen it off and on for 18 issues, it's part of continuity, and I can't wait for the classified toy. Okay, the other two things that stand out to me in this issue are that one, if you move ahead another 2 pages, we cut to Springfield. There's a construction crane rebuilding the community center, and every time we cut back to Springfield for the first time in any one issue, I feel like Hama and the artist go out of their way to put the word Springfield somewhere on a sign or on the side of a building. And that's reasonable and fun, right? Let's just sort of remind ourselves where we are. Part of it is this ongoing joke that it's this entirely camouflaged but taken over Cobra town. And part of it is just sort of reestablishing where we are, right? Every time you saw Arkham Asylum at the beginning of a scene in a comic, a TV show, or a video game, you show the gates and it says Arkham Asylum, whether it's way out in the animated series, whether it's sort of downtown, like in the last movie. I actually can't remember if there was a sign. Anyway, but on the page after this, this panel,
it's interesting as well. That Hama sometimes says that he'll add in a caption where he thinks that possibly it's needed because the art isn't clear enough. And in this one, you do have that Springfield caption, but you also have got a Springfield sign. It's more subtly on the community center, the letters sort of slightly falling off the building. But also, I do like it as a device to establish location, regardless of whether you can tell if it's there or not.
I think this is not a caption that is compensating for the art. I think this is a caption that's reminding the reader that we've changed locations from the previous panel, from the previous page, which Hama always does. I think the thing that he does more to compensate for artwork is write more dialogue to explain what's happening. And I don't think that is happening here. I think the storytelling in all these issues has been, adequate or superb for his purposes. So on the next page, this is where I feel like the issue sort of changes. And now I have a sense that A, things will be different for the next few issues than from the last few issues. And B, I can also see some gears turning in Hama's head. And it's this Crimson Guardsman who says, our organized resistance. So Crimson Guardsman and a Techno Viper have walked into Mindbender's lab, and Storm Shadow and Jinx are hiding in the foreground, not seen, but can hear this happening. And the Crimson Guardsman, who, by the way, does not identify himself, which I think is fine, but unusual for Hama, right? He doesn't say like, you know, this is Crimson Guardsman Walter Series 705. Nor does the Techno Viper say, hey, Crimson Guardsman Walter Series number 705. But he says, our organized resistance to Destro is going to be impossible without Cobra Commander. And I thought, when I read this, oh, that's great. Hama is already setting up the next wrinkle in this ongoing power dynamic, that Destro is not easily taking over Cobra, does not immediately or fully have Cobra Commander in his thrall, even though he can torture him, even though he literally has him as a captive on the other side of the world. And that there's going to be some kind of sustained Iron Grenadier versus Cobra friction or fight or battle or war centered here in Springfield. And this may simmer for a long time, and we may not check in with it much, and it may not sort of have marquee characters, or it may be sort of like front and center in two issues for like some big fight. But those two words, organized resistance, feels really different than what has happened recently, in Springfield or with Destro's forces.
Good.
And then the other thing, since I think I said two things jumped out at me in this issue, is a couple more pages ahead when we cut back to the Springfield Library. This is page, let's see, 20, 19, 18, 17, page 17. We cut to the Springfield Library where Dawn, in disguise as Nina, and Monty, her neighbor in the, what is it, Cobra Youth Brigade.
Yep.
And quote Nina's grandfather, which is really what's his name in disguise?
Sean.
Sean. In the final panel on this page, after all these oldsters have sung this American, what is this march? Is this the march of the Marines? I should know. Wasn't it? And there's something go rolling along. What is it, Mark?
I don't know. I'm going to have to rely on someone else to correct me on this one. I assumed it was like
he in the Cobra infantry. Call out your Cobra loud and strong. For ere you go, you will always know that the his tanks go rolling along. Okay, so
come on, everyone. His tanks come rolling along.
So in the final panel of this page, a Crimson Guardsman says to all those people, "Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg." Greg Augustin says, "That's the Army hymn. Thank you, Marines." This word balloon made me chuckle out loud. This Crimson Guardsman has his hand out to the right in like cliched acting of like, I am saying something, I am presenting something, and I'm totally fine with cliched body language for this panel. But he's looking back at us as we're sort of in the POV of this crowd of old folks seated in the library for this like nice community rally, right? And he's pointing to the coffee, which says regular and decaf, and there's some donuts, and there's a bulletin board, a literal bulletin board with cork behind him, and he says, "Wasn't that fun? Now it's time for Now it's time for coffee and Cobra crumb cake." And I thought, this feels like it's in the issue 30s or 60s. This panel feels like Hama is writing a scene in the Marvel series in 1985. And I don't know that I can be more specific than it's both cynical because this Crimson Guardsman is talking down to these old folks who are, I think the implication is they are veterans of Cobra, because they have Cobra pins and Cobra hats, and they're old and they're at the library, right? But also notice in the first panel, the library has blue tarps over the roof, which means it took damage during the battle. And Monty, and they're all standing when they sing. And then Monty and Nina are, I think, sort of in the back of the room, like watching it happen. And she's standing because she's with her grandfather's wheelchair and he's on oxygen, right, in disguise. And Monty is standing sort of straight and proud with his arms behind his back, but he's got the Cobra Youth handkerchief tied around his
neckerchief.
Neckerchief, thank you, tied around his. So Hama is both being cynical, but also very funny because it's not just crumb cake, it's Cobra crumb cake. So this note rhymes with, Yojo Cola and Cobra Cola and the Dreadnoks wanting grape soda and chocolate donuts, not because it's a food product, but because it's sort of branded or has been like taken over. And that panel right there, I think this is the least important panel in the entire issue in terms of moving plot forward. Because this panel where the Crimson Guardsman says this is not doing anything about Dawn in disguise or the resistance, the Cobra resistance against Destro and the Iron Grenadiers, right? This scene is happening sort of on its own, away from that stuff. But two things: one, it raises the stakes for the next page when Dawn gets found out, because it's not just a kid in front of her that discovers her deceit, right? Because she could kick him in the face and then like run, or she could knock him out and say something like, "Oh, don't worry about Monty, everyone. He has a crush on me. He's so excited." You didn't hear what he just said as she puts her glasses back on. No, her disguise is revealed in front of a Crimson Guardsman, right? So I don't know what's going to happen in the next issue, but Hama's giving himself for a room for Dawn to like have to both knock out Monty and also this Crimson Guardsman, and we don't know how big the room is.
Well, they're not in the room anymore at that point, though. They've gone out of the room and they're outside, and I think they're back at her house. That he's walked her back to her door, and he's taken that moment to lean in.
You are correct. I was truncating that space too much and not actually inspecting the panels in front of me. Okay, so the Crimson Guardsman is not there. But let me just go back to this point. I was half wrong on everything I just said, but that panel is really funny, and it's not. I was making this point when you and I were preparing for our panel with Larry Hama at this convention. As Hama has said to us, and I have to remind myself, Hama is not interested in plot, he's interested in character. And that's confusing sometimes because the two are synonymous and it seems like you can't separate the two. And I think a lot of people think, no, plot is more important. What happens? And this panel is all character, and it's so cynical and it's so funny because it's just this ongoing joke that like Cobra has taken over and either people don't know or they're okay with it. And Hama's saying, "Look at this. Isn't this terrible? This terrible guy." And everyone's like, yep. Okay. Back to you, Mark.
This last image is, I was just looking at us going, oh, that's a very Norm Brayfogle expression. There we go. Norm Brayfogle, who did a long and amazing run on Batman. So that's complete distraction.
And who never drew G.I. Joe, but man, wouldn't that have been cool?
Ooh, that would have been cool. Wouldn't that have been cool? But I sort of just was going to. I had to look up something as well. You're talking about Monty's neckerchief, and I was going to say, and also his woggle with a Cobra logo on it. And I had to sort of stop and check and look at it and say, is it a woggle? Is that the term? Am I going to say something that's going to get myself cancelled? I looked it up. I'm safe. It is the right term for a scout sort of neckerchief, connecting rubber tubey thing.
Sort of a pin.
Yeah, that is. It's not quite a pin. It's more like a round kind of bit of hoop that
like a belt buckle. A belt buckle for a neckerchief. A decorative.
That's right.
Okay. I've been talking for a while, Mark. You say something about the issue.
But Frank makes a point. It does stretch credulity that anyone in Cobra survives to retirement age, and it's an interesting point about how do you get Cobra retirees, because in the real world, the adventures of Cobra and G.I. Joe have been going on since 1982. So we're at, 43 years now? Start serving in your 30s. You could be in your 70s easy, but time in the comics doesn't work like that. Duke is still in his, I don't know, mid-30s-ish, something like that. So how does this all work? The no prize could be that these are the parents of Cobra inductees, and they've been properly, inducted into the whole Cobra way of life, and they've got all the accoutrements of the songs, the merchandise, the lapel pins, all the rest of it.
I think they
and that's how they're at an old age.
I think they are. First of all, they're not very many. It feels like in this scene there are 15. And compared to the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of no, I'm serious, hundreds of thousands of various Vipers and support staff.
These are the only old Cobras.
Well, I mean, if you're a Cobra infantry, and you're 18, you're 25, you're 35, and you make it up to Cobra officer, maybe you make it to Viper. I don't know how it works, and maybe you're a specialist, and you become a Secto Viper. At a certain point, at 55, I mean, surely there aren't a lot of Secto Vipers, but I don't think all of them and their bugs have been blown up. And so eventually they get cycled back into Springfield or Broca Beach, and they just have to live in those places. And so I disagree. I do think, not many, I do think there are older Cobra veterans. Okay, so Mark, what else is happening in this issue?
Diana confirms that Duke is now years old, so that's good. and Greg comes up with the phrase neckerchief slide, which is on a lot safer ground there. There was another interesting comment in the comments from Squishy, which is, I think Monty will need to be silenced. Ethical dilemma time, because I mean, interesting, in the comics lately there has been this little bit of G.I. Joe sort of silencing with extreme prejudice the people when they don't want to get found out, just as we saw with Multo shooting that pensioner in the Ed earlier on, but here we've got more of a dilemma, because Monty is a young Cobra. You can't be chopping off Monty's head, surely.
My response is that shooting a hypnotized Cobra cyborg, I don't think there's a lot of room that they can bring this person back to be the unbrainwashed, sort of regular, non-Cobra-ized cyborg, or revert them back to human. Two, just a few issues ago, Dawn did not let die the evil law enforcement officer who murdered her parents. So I do think she's going to, at most, knock out, and at minimum, tie up in a closet Monty. So silenced, yes, can't speak. I think he'll be breathing. Just a small detail while we're hopping around on page 2, 3, 4, 5. Page 5, man, Paul Peleteier draws such a good mainframe helmet, and this is a small thing.
This is a small thing.
It's a small thing. I'm when Joes come with helmets, when Joe figures have molded on helmets, I want to see them in the cartoon and in the comic drawn with their helmets, because that's what they look like. If they're all on vacation, or they're all undercover, or they're all in an Arctic mission, I don't want them all sort of taking off, obliterating, completely obstructing or disguising their regular costumes. And Mainframe's helmet is weird. I love it. I don't get it. Maybe there's computer stuff. Maybe it's armor. But this is a character who totally could just not be wearing a helmet inside a well-protected base many feet underground. But if you draw him without his helmet, it doesn't really look like Mainframe, right? And so I'm very happy to see this helmet, and it's just a good drawing. Frank Colosimo says Mainframe is cosplaying Starscream because of the ridges. Absolutely.
Mainframe. The thing is, Mainframe is so clever that he needs special fan connected to his head to vent out all of the hot air that his noggin is producing through that oversized brain.
While I'm talking about hats and headgear, I'll just point out in the previous issue, I wasn't tracking my fault, not Paul Pelletier's fault, which of the Joes was which, since they were now the three males in the was it the recon team, the infiltration team in the jungle at the edge of the beach on Cobra Island. They're all wearing the same costume now. I should have picked up on this. Muskrat still has Muskrat's regular hat, whereas Wetsuit is wearing I don't know how to describe this, the other hats that Navy SEALs wear.
Yeah, like a camo.
It's
what,
not.
What do they call it? Like a bin hat or something?
It's not as wide brimmed. That's an important detail which I missed last issue, and I like it because, as I just said, right, Muskrat came molded on with his hat molded on. That to me makes him, give him a little surfboard and a shotgun. Right, he came with a shotgun, right? And that's Muskrat. And then, while we're talking about hats and heads, going back to this page where Molto chops the head off of the Blue Ninja with a machete. On the next page, he is now completely in disguise as the Blue Ninja. And I think with one sentence of dialogue, I could accept this. As presented, it strains credulity a little bit because I have to think that the Blue Ninja is not a hollow body. It's not armor. I mean, I guess some of like those are pants. Okay, he could put on the pants. Okay, I just need a line where he says something like, I don't think I'm going to fit this armor with all of the, robot parts inside or something. Because it's not like there's a man underneath and he's stripping the clothes off the man and then putting the clothes on. It's like a Cobra bat, right? Like you could take a Cobra bat's boots and pants off. How would you do the chest piece, right? It'd be a little harder to, like, in 3 minutes, sort of disguise yourself with that. And then similarly, the Blue Ninja's decapitated head, right? That's got like robot brain in it. It's not like Mainframe's helmet where there's sort of an empty volume under it. So, okay. And then,
I mean, they do at least in that sort of top left panels kind of help guide you along as to how it might work, that he's lifting off the outer kind of faceplate bit. Okay. So it doesn't strain credulity quite as much as it. I mean, they go some way to help you suspend your disbelief, even if it does seem a little bit. In the comments, we're getting a discussion on the types of hats. I was saying bucket hat, like sort of the Happy Mondays, that sort of thing. I think the more accurate term is boonie hat. But on this particular page that we are looking at here, we've got a little bit of a frisson of sexual chemistry here, or sort of the female gaze from what she called Helix, looking at Molto. He says, "You get changed, I won't look." And she says, "I've got no problem with that," as she ogles him, Tim. I say ogles.
Wait, there's more to describe here. She's taking her shirt off, her yellow shirt that's under her sort of, action figure armor, because she's going to be putting on the tank top that the cyborg was wearing, the lady cyborg that they just sanctioned. And he has taken off his shirt and he's taking off his ghillie suit because he's gonna put on all of the Blue Ninja costumes. So he's being a gentleman. He's not looking. And look at this crop, right? So the camera is at like waist height, and we're looking at Helix through the negative space of Molto's arm, between his torso and his arm. And she's looking back at him. So we can see her like sports bra or something. And the way that she's drawn is not like Jim Lee drawing Psylocke, like walking by Cyclops in like X-Men #3 and X-Men #9 back in 1991. Like, I'm going to take a shower. I might leave the door open because I'm definitely flirting with you. Where's Jean? And Cyclops like, right? This is not that, like, very conveniently placed steam blocking just a little bit of Psylocke, in like a 2/3 page splash. She's like, I take a shower the way that models pose in photo shoots, right? That's a very exciting page. That's not what this is.
It made an impression on you.
Made an impression on many people. This is not that. And this is not exploitive. exploitative, right? This is sort of the business of professionals changing costume, and yet very subtly, right? She's looking back, her eyebrows are up, there's a little bit of a smile on her face, right? She's not drawn like as an object. She's drawn as like doing what you do. You take your shirt off so you can be in disguise.
Yeah,
and he's taking
the object.
He's being objectified. And this feels a little bit like I don't think I've read any of these scenes, but I've tracked a little bit of this online, where in the last 15 years, a couple writers have written Dick Grayson in various Nightwing comics as having a really nice butt, or like giving him an excuse to change costume or go into disguise. And so you can like see him taking his pants off, and he's got like really nice boxer briefs or something, or whatever. And like, his kid was an acrobat, and he's been a superhero his whole life, so he's going to be in good shape. So this is considering how not sexual and even sexy G.I. Joe comics are, right? Like the most sexy G.I. Joe comics get are Baroness variant covers. But the insides like never, right? Like there's no scene where it's, the Joes are at the beach or at the pool, and like for a panel you can enjoy your favorite men or women in like bathing suits. Like that does not happen.
There was that one issue of Special Missions.
Right.
Yeah.
The baseball one?
No, the one with, well, that one, but it's Quick Kick and Stalker and somebody else. They're on holiday.
Okay.
And it's the cover with Quick Kick on the front cover, standing on top of a bus with an Uzi. And
right.
They are hanging out at the pool in that one.
Okay.
But anyway, we get
one issue out of 400, right? two issues out of 400, and the baseball one wasn't even written by Hama, right? So if it seems like Diana Davis says, this is how actual human beings interact, not how guys write human beings interacting. This is realistic flirting. So if it seems like we're spending a lot of time on this one panel, I think it's because both Mark and I are A, enjoying it, and B, enjoying it because it's a little different for G.I. Joe. It doesn't go too far, but it also perhaps offers a glimpse of what might happen later. That maybe one of these characters, these two characters, has a thing for the other one, and maybe something will develop. Because we do spend a lot of time in G.I. Joe comics with two long-established relationships: Destro Baroness, Snake Eyes Scarlet, and Hama has
and Lady J.
Yeah, okay, less so, but yes, three long-established relationships.
This frisson of tension or chemistry does make another word balloon elsewhere in the book extra special, and this makes the reappearance after several years of a jingle that you'll be glad to see that I'm playing, Tim, that you've not heard for a while, and it is this one.
This is how the story goes. Attention. At this moment, you are now listening to
Talking innuendo.
If you are offended by words like
Sucking, flesh wound. Willy, Pete. Balls, crystal balls. Hypno shield.
whatever, take the tape out now. This is not a pop album. And by the way, suck my
Grandmother's
mother...
brick in a Prada handbag.
So,
That's
Tim,
great.
are you ready? Are you ready for this next panel?
Yeah, what's the next panel?
This is Wetsuit, Multo, and Helix
sir.
are attempting a penetration.
Well,
Boo, boo, boo!
but that actually happens first.
It does happen
anyway,
first.
I do think Hama is
Nothing.
just writing. I do think Hama is just writing military stuff here and not setting up the change of clothes for a few panels later. Infinite Entertainment says, "My mom says I can't watch this part, guys." Okay. But let's stop hovering over Joe's disrobing. They do make it inside the casino, and
they do. Or do they? Do they get as far as the casino?
Yes, I've got eyes on Multo and Helix. They're walking into the casino, and as Wetsuit says this. It's a POV shot looking through his binoculars. Molto in disguise is looking back at us, giving a thumbs up, and they're like at the entrance, and so, and then I have to remind myself at the bottom of this page. So okay, I appreciate at the bottom of this page that Wetsuit is sort of narrating for Muskrat, and he says, "Oh, Dr. Mindbender's back. He's got some new wardrobe," and Joes have changed costumes often over the years, and it never gets called out. But as a kid, it was both shocking and exciting to me when a character was released with a new color scheme or a new design, Flint Tiger Force, Flint Eco Warriors. And, there's no reason in the logic of the actual comic that Flint would wear the same shirt and pants for 10 years, or he would have 7 changes of clothes so that every day he could wear a black shirt and camo pants. But in the logic that these characters wear certain costumes and then sometimes they change costumes, and particularly that Mindbender's costume here is quite different and might suggest an upgrade, I do appreciate that a Joe sees it and calls it out. And then I'm reminded, since he's saying, and scope out what he brought to the party, Serpentor, right, as behind Mindbender, 2 blue ninjas are loading out from the helicopter, the refrigerator coffin with the Serpentor corpse. I'm reminded that these 4 Joes just spent, what was the math? Like 72 hours paddling in the Gulf of Mexico, several issues worth of sort of off-panel, off-camera time, paddling from Cobra Island to the coast of Florida with Mindbender as prisoner, using that icebox coffin as their sort of flotation raft. And so there's a lot going on in this issue, and I had forgotten that Serpentor was going to be a part of it. But he is reintroduced. Considering how many times Serpentor has died in this comic, folks, I don't want Hama to bring him back again, but it's Hama's show, and I don't get paid to write this monthly comic. And I do think if Hama does bring back Serpentor, he'll find a new way to do it, just as the last time it wasn't really Serpentor, it was Genghis Khan. But I guess if I was Mindbender, this might be sort of the most valuable, besides my own brain, this might be the most valuable asset I had. Considering that, I've been ousted from Cobra and I don't have access to my lab, but I have this really valuable person sample that I've, reanimated a couple times. So I don't love that this prop is here, but I do recognize that there's a lot of story potential in it, and fingers crossed, Serpentor version 2 wasn't all that different or novel for me from Serpentor version 1. And I'm on record as saying I don't like how he died because of that word balloon. But I wonder what will happen here.
Maybe next time he'll be an iguana, says Frank. Just like the Deke cartoon.
Okay. What other subplot should you talk about?
I was just gonna say I was musing on sort of Mindbender's return or reinvention in this new outfit. And it did make me think a little bit back to the early days of the G.I. Joe comic, where the momentum of the comic was very much about introducing new characters or introducing the new toy of an established character and their new design. And, without that same sort of momentum, the modern comic has felt a little bit different. But that kind of making a big scene of Mindbender having a new outfit, almost like they're introducing a new toy design, felt a little bit like that. So it was sort of another, in terms of you saying maybe the scene in Springfield felt like something that could have easily happened in the 30s. I think that bit of introducing Mindbender and showing off his new togs is also a kind of a little bit of a throwback to introducing, a regular kind of drumbeat of introducing a new character, and because there's a new toy on the shelves.
Yeah, and not that we need to talk again about last month's issue, because we did a whole episode on that. But last issue spent a full page on Mindbender's new costume and upgrades. Maybe it was a page and a half. and this speaks to what you were just saying, and also this, when Sean Collins got the new Snake Eyes costume in IDW, what was it? Was it in the 240s? I can't remember. And if you at a glance, it just looks like every Snake Eyes costume, but there were all these subtle differences, like little bits on his mask and a slightly different gun and a slightly different arrangement of straps and clips on his torso and legs. But in that first issue, someone calls out all the new features on Sean Collins as Throwdown new Snake Eyes costume, and that is both a version of what you just said, right? There's no new toy, but I'm going to introduce this new costume or character as if it's a new toy. And also, as we've said before, Hama is really interested in gear and what it can do. And in fact, we asked him about that at our panel at Joe Fest 2025. And if you haven't listened or watched, that's a whole separate episode that you can find on YouTube and wherever you get your Talking Joe episodes, podcasts, blah, blah, blah. All right, let's talk about Mark, do you want to say sort of one more thing about Storm Shadow and Dawn in the sewer? Do you want to talk about the Cobra Commander subplot? There are maybe 2 or 3 scenes we haven't at all gotten to yet.
Yeah, I mean, the scene in the sewer didn't necessarily do a huge amount in there. It didn't necessarily advance things along massively, but it showed the ninjas doing something cool. It kind of, reestablished Storm Shadow as the kind of slightly more experienced of the two, and Dawn maybe still with a little bit to learn. And it had this cool, inverted commas, zombie scene with this Cobra Trooper sort of, reanimating himself and attacking and having a nice bit of action associated with it. I thought, blowing up those Cobra mutant zombies brains would be the last that we see of them, but constantly surprised by by Hama, and a couple of months later, one of them does make a return, and that they don't in the speech bubbles talk about it, but this Cobra Trooper does have a big hole in his head, and that is obviously the result of that brain bomb going off. So we kind of are given the explanation as to what has happened without it being sort of spoon-fed that his head exploded, but there's enough brain left in there that he's somehow able to still function for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm thinking about different ways that Hama could have written this scene. He could have Storm Shadow and Dawn. I mean, let's forget the solicitation for a minute, which promises, ninja action versus zombies in the sewers, right? If you're just looking at this as 20 more pages for this month of G.I. Joe, and in the previous issue, these two ninjas are gonna go into the sewers and infiltrate Springfield underground, right? Hama could then spend between 0 and 20 pages this issue on that, and he spends 4 or so, and to call out as well that often the solicitation and the cover might even come before the script has been done, so it might have been that he's going to go, well, I'm going to do something with the ninjas in the sewer, Hubert, you go away and do the cover, write some relatively vague solicitation text, and I'll come up with something that does at least something in the sewer with the Storm Shadow and Dawn. Yes, Hama has said that he finds the monthly catalog summaries for upcoming issues of G.I. Joe sort of unhelpful or annoying. I don't know how much of which one, because I think that maybe the way he phrased it to me is issues often don't match, because I'm writing the issues later, and by the time I get around to the issue, I have a different idea of what I want to happen, and it no longer matches. So maybe I shouldn't add the annoyed part. I think he might have just been stating a fact. If people don't understand why they don't match, or if people are aggravated, here's why. All right, so Hama shows up for this issue. Storm Shadow and Dawn are going to walk through the sewer, and Hama's going to spend as much or as little space on this as he wants. And it's a good idea to spend at least a little space on it, because this is a lot of people's favorite character and a really cool new character, relatively new. Is Dawn 10 years old? Mark, what's her first 220? Is it 227, 228? When's her first appearance? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
Somewhere around about there.
I mean, she doesn't get her costume for a little while after that. But anyway.
And we're talking about the age of Dawn since she first appeared, not the age of the character in the comic, to be clear here.
She's somewhere between 16 and however old you'd be to have gone through basic and joined G.I. Joe. Okay. So Hama's got a good reason to include these two characters doing this because he likes both these characters and he can have some ninja action. And I was thinking, there's a version of this where you just skip the sewer stuff and you have them pop up in the sort of the floor grates of some room or lab in Springfield, and then they're discovered, or then they have to cut the camera, or then they hear something interesting. But it occurs to me, again, plot versus character, right? Plot is that Storm Shadow and Dawn make their way through the sewer and have to fight off a zombie or a cyborg, whatever. Character is that panel sequence you referred to earlier, where Dawn slashes one, it's not finished off, Storm Shadow finishes it off, and then he says, "You did good, Dawn. Next time, follow through with the combination." And so what Hama's doing here, this is character. This is, as you said, reminding us that Storm Shadow is the teacher and Dawn is not as experienced. And we might forget because either we showed up at issue 301 and haven't read any of the IDW issues. And so, all the Joes are kind of the same to us. They're all about the same age, all about the same seniority. Or because of this sort of truncation of time, even though she's much younger than him, she's sort of less young than him now that we've sort of, squeezed her into current continuity where she's just a regular Joe. Barking Fridge says, Dawn is in her 20s. She joined the Joes at 18 after the Battle with Firefly. Battle with Firefly is 250. And does she join in the yearbook that Kei Zama drew?
Yeah, I think that's the end of her training, the yearbook. Yeah, so they just sort of do mark that point that she, becomes an adult, does the military training, and then is old enough to properly become a Joe. So,
and folks, if it sounds like I'm complaining, like, oh, Dawn's age is inconsistent, I am not complaining. I'm just observing, right? I lived through a bunch of sitcoms in the 80s, like Family Ties and what's the one with Urkel? Family Matters, where in one season the mom has a baby, and then in the next season the baby is 5. Because the producers did not want to deal with a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid actor or set of twins, right? Which it's going to take too long. Let's just recast. Didn't they do this in Star Trek: The Next Generation? Doesn't Worf's kid just jump ahead 3 years? Because it's no, I need this kid to be 5 and hilarious.
Wolf speed.
Okay, so this is a cool scene, and Greg Augustin says Growing Pains, right? Growing Pains did this as well. Okay, so you want to talk about Cobra Commander in Scotland, Mark?
Yeah, so Cobra Commander is up there in Scotland being held as a prisoner, and so we are given sort of an early peek that he might be escaping from that overheard dialogue overheard in Springfield from those Cobra loyalists, and that's a nice way of sort of segueing between these different scenes. It's, I think quite a clever approach that an overheard piece of dialogue in Springfield directly leads us then into that sort of other plot happening in Scotland, where Cobra Commander has been held prisoner. He's being guarded by a guardsman in a kilt. As is wont to be seen in Destro's personal guard, and he complains about his offal and oatmeal boiled in a sheep's stomach, aka haggis, which is what everyone does eat as breakfast, lunch, dinner in Scotland, and then he takes off his glasses, hollow earpieces, thermite in the left one, aluminium powder in the right. He's got a fuse cord in the lining of his beret, which is inserted in the lock. Matches are in a hollow heel, and with an ignition, he blows the door. And this isn't all stuff that Cobra Commander walks around with on a daily basis as well. They do make the point in that overheard dialogue that someone has sort of sneaked these things to Cobra Commander. And as he makes his way out, he chucks away his haggis, but takes the steel tray. And then we do see that steel tray. We see the aftermath of that steel tray being put to good use as we see a guardsman lying on the ground with the tray next to him. Obviously, he was boinked about the head with it. And what a great transition scene. The sheep barbaring as we cut to a truck with Cobra Commander in it.
I think that is the verb bleating. Do sheep bleat? BLEATING. I only think I know that because you sometimes watch shows on streaming with the captions on, even though you can hear them because it's noisy or characters are mumbling or speaking with accents, or you're really tired and you're like, I'm going to read this while I listen to it. And I'm really fascinated. There was a push when I was teaching some years ago to provide video that we were showing to students captioned, because there may have been a student who didn't hear fully, and in order to be fair to them, they wanted the administration wanted all the students to get sort of a similar experience. So it's like, can you show any video? Can you show the captioned version? And the first time this happened, I thought, that's a lot of work. I don't want to do that. And then I sort of got into it. And students were doing it when they would show their homework, because maybe they had a fellow student who had issues with hearing. And it becomes a really interesting exercise in very quickly describing the sound of something. Like when I watch a show on, Diana Davis says, sheep bleat. Yes, they also scream. When I watch a show on Netflix.
You can also be silent. I know about that. I've seen a film about that one.
I'm really interested in sort of, since I don't spend time on farms, what are the verbs for animal noises? But also, my wife and I have seen the trailer for Jurassic World Rebirth 8 times in theaters recently. Every movie we've gone to for the last 2 months, we've seen that trailer. And she was somewhere out in public and there was a TV on and the sound was down, so the captions were on. And she said, I'm really enjoying the caption descriptions for this Jurassic, it's like growl in brackets, growling, like thunderous footsteps, screaming, rumbling, growling. Anyway, we're talking about G.I.
on subtitles. I wonder at what point, at what year the phrase or the terminology chittering first entered the lexicon, because that seems to be on almost every single thing that I watch now. Certain lexicon in the subtitles, which is just sort of really
who chitters
caught on.
Who or what?
It's sort of any like in The Last of Us, maybe some of the zombie monsters in the background. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't know what that was, I knew what that was. I think I have seen that for captioning on Stranger Things.
And Stranger Things. It appears a lot, but
where back
10 years back.
It's sort of like Spices, like Frank Colosimo says, I have been chittering since it was cool.
Before. And Greg Augustine, while we're on this page, makes a very astute observation that the driver of this particular truck is called Robbie McLeod. Robbie equals Robert, which can also be shortened to Bob. Is this a reference to Bob McLeod, aka the inker who has inked various G.I. Joe works? And
sorry, I
think you're back. You're back in the room.
My mic for a second. Speaking of Cobra Commander on this truck with some bleating sheep and Robbie McLeod, where did Cobra Commander get that pistol?
Probably from the guard that he bashed about the heat with his tray.
Okay. That is not an unreasonable. I'm not bothered by this logic. I think Cobra Commander escaping from an enemy castle somehow could get a pistol. This is not me saying like, did he have it all along? and we haven't seen it until now. Hasn't been established. Boo, Devils do. This is not that.
Right.
Even when we're not talking about Devils do issues, I'm ready to give him a hard time. And then Barking Fridge says your no prize is in the mail, Mark.
I think feel like I've given a few no prizes this issue.
Okay, so then
I think
the final page.
You might be on a different mic to the one that you started on.
Okay, hold on.
But yeah, the final page is one where we do get to see the panels that justify 2 Baroness covers for this issue. Yeah, is that?
Am I back? Do I sound good?
You might. I think you might still be on a different mic.
I'm going to leave and come back. You carry on without me.
So on the final page, we discover that Cobra Commander didn't just escape off of his own initiative. Destro seems to have been in on the whole thing. Baroness, do you think he suspects? And Destro replies, "Nay, my dear Baroness, his self-delight at getting away with his escape is blinding him. Remind me to reimburse Robbie McLeod for his inconvenience. Now we shall see the efficacy of the neural trigger we implanted in his brain while he was sedated for his surgeries."
Couple of things going on here. One, Hama is reminding us that Destro is honorable, that this villager, maybe this farmer who lives and works near Destro's castle, right, who's got a gun aimed at his face, right? I think Cobra Commander might, kick the guy out and take the Jeep and take the sheep. So Destro is demonstrating to us that he wants to, reimburse. And I feel like that's really apologize this neighbor for the inconvenience of being held hostage by the world's most dangerous terrorist.
Here's a voucher. Here's a money off coupon.
I think he's going to give him a demon without any missiles. Although, where would you put the sheep? And then when I read that, I thought, well, what about the guard who got hit on the head with the tray? It's like, well, he's the same thing. I think he's going to get a voucher. I think he's going to get a demon with no. He's going to be promoted. He's going to be a ferret. He's going to be promoted to driving. Anyway, and then I had forgotten that Cobra Commander was sedated while in Destro's care, and so besides the button that Destro pushed in the last issue that could zap Cobra Commander and cause him great pain, this sort of remote control, radio controlled torture device. I forgot about that, so this is a good reminder, but also that Destro can take it a step further. I guess it works long distance. Also, just a little unusual bit sort of in layout here. The final panel of this entire issue is a wordless panel and is a close-up on the computer screen that we're looking at in the second to last panel. And so I feel like the sort of the dramatic beat is that Destro is saying this simultaneously with us looking at the final panel. But the way that Paul Peleteier drew the characters, or sort of the amount of dialogue that Hama had in mind for what.
He's done it again. We've lost your.
Here I am.
Again.
I'm just going to use the internal mic. Sorry. The amount of information, the amount of dialogue that Hama has in mind for what we're seeing as these final two panels ends up sort of getting split across these two panels, because if the word balloon on the second to last panel were any lower, it would block the Baroness, it would block the guys at the computer. If this detail of a profile shot of an X-ray with a little like microchip in it was on that screen in the second to last panel, it might be too small. And so I feel like what's sort of happening here is, if this was a movie, while Destro is saying this in the second to last panel, the camera is zooming in slowly on that monitor, on that screen, to show us what we see in the final panel. So it's not unclear. It's not bad. There's no problem with this layout. It's just a little different than normal, because we end on this wordless panel that ends up sort of reading like sort of a postscript to that dialogue, even though I feel like they're simultaneous.
I think Diana's been doing some desk research. Apparently chittering has been around since the mid-12th century. Chaucer used it in 1386. It was always a verb about making chirpy, twittering sounds. There we go. But it does feel like it's exploded in its usage in recent times. There was the other one was, is it called The Gorge? It's the one with that girl off of Queen's Gambit and that guy plays the drums as
Miles
snipers.
Teller.
Mm-hmm.
It's Goose's kid.
That's right. Goose's kid in Top Gun 2.
He's Reed Richards in the very boring Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, I never got around to watching that one.
I watched it on a plane. It's fun to watch because I like comparing all these movies, but I'm going to say something harsh, everyone. I'm sorry. It's boring.
Should we move on to letters page, Tim?
Yeah. Am I on the backup mic?
Yep.
All right. Well, you start talking about letters page. I'll be back in 10 seconds.
Okay. So on the letters page, we have an exciting letter from a friend of the show and possibly someone on the chat, or as we speak now, Matthew Matson. And Matthew said, I'm not too sure why, but they included 3 paragraphs that I didn't write on the letters page. I never mentioned anything about issue 400. I don't know whose letter that is.
Oh, no.
So, unfortunately, it looks like there's an uncredited extra letter as well as the actual letter that Matthew wrote.
Yeah. You know what? I was thinking, having just met Matthew Matson in person, and he's a grown-up, and the letter, this letter didn't strike me as the person that I met at this convention a week ago when I read this letters page. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I was slightly picking up on this editorial letters page error, Matthew.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much credit I can take for this, but I did gently nudge Matthew to submit his photos into the letters page, because he does do very nice diorama photography and has been doing some cool cover recreations. So I did say you should send it in, and he did, and had his diorama photo cover recreation in the back of the letters page, which I think it might be the first cover recreation that appears in the pages of the letters page. So that's very cool. He says, I have really been enjoying the art on the covers and in the books from all of the G.I. Joe books. I have been inspired to make action figure covers as best I can. The Tunnel Rat tripwire covers were great. So congrats to Matthew for having your cover recreation included in the letters page.
When we spoke to
Matt confirms. I hope I could call you Matt. Matthew confirms. I never thought of it until you mentioned it. Hooray! I can take credit.
So my letter where I give Skybound editorial a hard time for all of the damn typos, not just in the letters pages, but in word balloons in various G.I. Joe comics, has not seen print yet. And if it doesn't, that's fine. I'm not offended. But maybe, Matthew, send in a note and say, hey, Postbox the Pit, I think you mushed my letter with someone else's. And then they can say, and then next month, Alex Antone.
And then they can say, Tim was right. We should pay more attention.
No, I just want them to give credit to the person who did write the part of this letter, which mentions issue 400. In the same way, it's like, oh, we forgot to credit so-and-so who inked a few pages last month. Thanks, so-and-so. I feel like a little sorry, we left so-and-so's name out last month. That would be lovely. Mark, my arch nemesis, who writes more letters than me and always gets them printed, got another letter printed in issue 318. Oh, wait, it's you. Mark, congratulations. Is this your 6th, 7th?
I need to do the maths and add it up, but it's getting in there. I'm hoping to break into double digits before too long.
Would you? So, folks, I think what this is really saying is not that Mark is excellent or special or writes good letters. It's that you all are not writing enough letters. Because if this guy can get so many in, they're not getting a lot to choose from. Mark, would you read us your letter?
Certainly, I will. Dear Alex and crew, ARAH 314 was a blast. It is always exciting to see a new artist take on G.I. Joe, and Andrew Cronky did not disappoint. The G.I. Joe cast and world is so vast that almost any type of story can be told. It was fun to have a more grounded special missions type story as a contrast to the long-running Serpentor Khan saga, and to spend some more time with a different cast of characters. When we interviewed Andrew, we discovered what a shark enthusiast he is. So my new dream story would be to have Andrew Cronky illustrating a story with the G.I. Joe team in peril, surrounded by sharks, real life, robotic, or both. Until next time, Yo Joe. Mark, Talking Joe Seddon, the Talking Joe podcast.
Editor Alex Antone responds, "Yo, Mark, sounds like a shipwreck story to me. We'll see." And that sounds like a blow off. So I think you got to suggest it again. That sounds like a very reasonable blow off because there are 400 characters in this comic, and I think sometimes an editor might say to the writer, "Hey, do you want some ideas or you want some characters to think about who haven't been in the book recently?" And the writer might say, "Sure," or the writer might say, "Eh." And if the editor thinks the writer might say, "Eh," the editor may not make the suggestion in the first place. Well, that's it for my. I haven't mentioned the colors of Francesco Segala at all. That's issue. Right, and they are still good. And each scene still has a different palette from all the other scenes. The Joes in the jungle, it's a very yellow green, and the Crimson Guardsman and the Televiper in Serpentor's lab, it's very blue purple, and then the hallway in Castle Destro is very red brown, but then the cell where Cobra Commander is very purple. Just great.
Tim, I did prepare some extra content that we didn't look at. I was going to say, during the week of Joe Fest, the weekend of Joe Fest, up the road in North in Charlotte was Heroes Con, which is a gigantic comic con featuring many guests, including several G.I. Joe guests or comic book creators, let's say, including Chris Mooneyham. And online we have seen 3 of the pieces of art that he created for Heroes Con, including this amazing Snake Eyes illustration with him sort of framed against an Arashikage I Ching symbol.
Very cool. These are on sketch covers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
this is on the I think the
21
21 blank, this one.
Yeah, so the Silent Interlude reprint from a few months ago that's on newsprint, but the cover is that thick white paper, a blank white cover with just the G.I. Joe logo, so an artist can really ink it or paint on it, and it'll hold the ink. Very, very cool drawing, very cool design choice and composition. I made a little noise loud, which was a combination. Yes, no, say it.
This should be a cover.
Yes,
a real cover.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, and it kind of feels like a variant cover because they've done variant covers kind of like this. But this is such a cool image. It is version 1 of Snake Eyes. It's I think the noise that I made when I saw it was a combination of the word "wow" and I don't know what some 2-syllable word that starts with B, like bonanza or something. It was an
Bazinga.
I don't say that word.
It's your favorite.
No, it was. I was really surprised by. I'm ready for. Okay, here's the thing. I'm ready for convention sketches to be sort of with no background or with a minimal background, because most of them are, and that's fine. The more that an artist draws at a convention, the fewer people they can draw for, and to have this added element, which is not a background, but becomes a background, right? You suddenly have depth, like he's somewhere, and then there's all this stuff in front. And it's also a clever use of negative space that we have not, I think, ever seen before on a G.I. Joe illustration. And then since we haven't seen any work by Chris Mooneyham in a little while, it was sort of that much more of a surprise. And then that it happened while you and I were together at a G.I. Joe convention, at a somewhat nearby other convention. It just felt very exciting. Like if you were in England and I was in the Northwest of America, and somewhere else in America, Chris Mooneyham drew this and posted it online, we'd both say, awesome. But this had just happened. And someone we know owns this?
I don't know who owns this one.
Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. And then this one.
I do know who owns this one.
Who's got
two thumbs and owns a cool Serpentor Khan cover? This guy. So friend of the show.
Listeners, Mark is pointing to himself.
Friend of the show, Shane Simic, was at Heroes Con and very generously arranged for this piece to be done. And so this is currently in Shane's hands, but hopefully will be in mine before too.
Can you describe it for listeners who can't see it?
It is Serpentor Khan, arms crossed, sort of. He's kind of almost leaning back, but that's because with the camera, there's no camera, is almost at waist height, kind of looking up at Khan, and his sort of eyes are in shadow. He's got a sort of scheming, diabolical smile, a sort of a tiny pinprick of light sort of glimmering in his eye. His snakes on his collar are kind of raised menacingly. His hair and cloak are kind of blowing in the breeze. There's some sort of little flecks of maybe ash in the background, sort of blowing there. There's a lot to love with this one. It's it's pretty amazing for a con sketch.
Similarly, when I saw this, I made another noise of delight. That this technically belonged to you and would be in your possession one day. And similarly, so like this guy just drew this like yesterday, 3 hours from where we are at a convention, which for a moment, listeners, viewers, Mark was considering also going to. If there was some way to fly to Augusta, Georgia, and drive back 3 hours to Charlotte to go to that other convention, and then backtrack 3 hours to Joe Fest. And also, would I want to join him? And if it was 1 hour, absolutely. If it was 2 hours, maybe. But it's hard for me to wrap my head around one convention, one big event, that's taking up a whole weekend, and to sort of split it into two. It's not like it's too much. It's that I worry that something would go wrong, and the rental car breaks down and we're stuck on the highway and we're not at either of them. We should have just stayed at the one that we knew we were already going. Anyway, and then also considering that I don't think we'll ever see this character again in G.I. Joe because he's dead, and we haven't seen him in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And so sort of like the Snake Eyes thing, like, hey, I know that guy. What a cool drawing of that guy that no one's ever drawn before. This is like, I know that guy. He just died. Oh, he's back for a moment on this really great. I mean, this is not a sketch. This could just be a cover. I'm sure Chris Mooneyham, if I said that, he'd say something like, oh, this is a little rough for me. I shouldn't assume. I have a feeling that Chris Mooneyham does see a tiny difference between this convention sketch and what he would draw if it was an official, cover that an editor would approve and that Hasbro would approve. But to my eye, it is cover quality.
Nice. And speaking of which, this next one is certainly cover quality. It's a glorious Crocmaster pin-up piece done for Shane Simic. I believe, again, this is technically a con sketch because if prior to the con, Shane didn't have anything lined up with Chris, it was a case of, come to me, get on my list for the con. So I believe this was done at the con, and what an amazing piece of Crocmaster, the sort of the Croc there lying in a glorious detail with the sort of chain, the spiked chain collar around its neck. Crocmaster holding on to a sort of that chained leash and kind of lurching over the top of the crocodile. It's pretty fantastic stuff there from Mooneyham.
Can you go and here's a photo of Chris Mooneyham holding that piece of art, standing at his table at Heroes Con, and he's standing in front of his vertical banner, which people at conventions sometimes have made, so they have a little signage behind them, and that one has his name and that Snake Eyes drawing that he did for the Kickstarter campaign in color. I'll just say two more things about this image. The top third of the image doesn't have anything in it, and there isn't really a background, but because Mooneyham has added a bit of dirt texture just around the crocodile and a bit of grass and fauna just beyond it in the distance, and then because he draws this rectangle which creates a bit of a frame. So there's sort of a horizon line now. And that rectangle that's not like a doorway or a goalpost in this physical space. That's just a way to say this image now has a frame, and a color artist would do something different in the square behind them versus the outer edge sort of around them. And so it activates all that empty space, but it does so in a subtle, smart way. So for a convention, finger quotes, sketch, this looks like someone spent 4 hours on it. And I still think of convention sketch as something that someone spends, 10 or 20 minutes on. And I'm perfectly happy for the sketchier, looser, faster version. The last thing I'll say about this is I have always seen Joe Kubert and Jordi Bernet in Chris Mooneyham's work. And I think this is the first or second time that I have seen a lot of Adam Kubert in Chris Mooneyham, in the pose on Crocmaster, in the proportions and shapes of his legs, in the face on the crocodile. The crocodile is cartooned in a way that I really see Adam Kubert do. And someone, remind me who, Mark? Someone online said, best drawing of, was that me? Someone said, did someone say this is
my brother? I think this was Peter.
Someone said something like, this is the definitive, or this best drawing of Crocmaster ever? Yes, the answer is yes.
So Chris Mooneyham was not the only person at Heroes Con. The artist of this very issue itself was also there, Paul Peleteier. And this was something that we've seen from him before in his sketches. It's a shot of Baroness, but he does do these very nice sort of, I'd call them almost delicate sort of pencil sketches of characters at the at conventions like this, and it sort of gives him a chance to maybe spotlight a character and their design and sort of come up with a pose that he might not otherwise be able to sort of fit in a standard story. So it's nice to kind of see this slightly different approach from Peleteier.
We're looking at the Baroness. We're seeing her from mid-thigh up. She's turned 3/4 away from us, but her head is, and her eyes are sort of aiming back at us. She's holding a small pistol. She has long hair, and you're aware of it sort of behind her torso. And Peleteier has, this is all in pencil, but he's penciled it as if someone's going to ink it, because there are thinner lines and thicker lines. And then where he's spotting blacks for the inker, where there's sort of the shininess of her costume, both her sort of armor plates and the skin tight suit under it, he has very lightly in pencil and the shine of her hair filled that in. And so you're very aware of where the inker would apply the ink. What is left white for the color artist, and what's going to be black? Very, very pretty, very, very handsome.
And then also at the convention was Andrew Kroenke, rhymes with donkey. And he, this one was, I believe, a pre-con commission for friend of show, Shane. And I think he was looking, on the back of Blodrick, his indie book, as well as Roadblock, trying to think of a sort of a muscular, dynamic character to spotlight, and came up with the unusual Salvo, who is one of these characters who's very cool, but doesn't necessarily get quite as much time in the sun as others. So again, when you think of Salvo, one of the nicer pieces of Salvo, I would guess, that I've seen for sure, wearing his The Right of Might t-shirt.
Yeah, so Salvo here, so this is penciled and inked. The inking feels, it feels like that, 90s, Scott Williams, sort of hot and slick style. There's there's a lot of precision in every single line and every single bit of texture to show where, like a muscle or his pants are sort of away from us and in shadow, or sort of stretched because of what the fabric is doing, or the sort of twist in his pose. He's fully geared up here. He's got his crazy missile launcher. He's got his does he have a gun that fires like landmines? Is that what Salvo comes with?
Yeah.
And then he even has his sort of suitcase satchel.
Oh yeah.
And there's just a lot of torsion and twisting. The way that his face and his torso are aiming sort of to the left, but his waist is more to the right, and then each of his legs is sort of twisting in a way to sort of counterbalance and stabilize him. Frank Colosimo says, "That's awesome. Salvo's a fave of mine, who's generally ignored as so much of the Deke era is." And then on the bottom quarter of this panel, pinup, Kroenke has drawn some tank treads, as if Salvo was walking past some, battlefield damaged vehicle. And then the sort of top 3/4 background is just smoke, billowing smoke, as if, the one missile that's the two missiles that are missing from his crazy missile launcher are the things that did this damage. This is cover worthy. And it does feel like it belongs right next to Kroenke's Roadblock cover from Silent Missions. This feels like, the idea was, do the same approach with this other Big Joe character. Mark, you muted.
Yep. Two more from Kroenke. The first was another pre-con commission. I don't know who the ultimate I don't know who the ultimate owner of this one was, but very cool. Firefly, and as I'm looking at it now, he's going a little bit nuts with Firefly's wonky eye as well, which is a bit of fun.
So Firefly is sort of half kneeling. His right leg is fully bent, and then his left leg is sort of stretching past us, as if maybe he's sort of leaning on a little ledge. His left foot is on the ground and his right foot is up and bent, tucked under him. He's holding his submachine gun. He's got his backpack. There's a bit of a wall behind him, which has a Cobra logo that looks like it's, paint stenciled, and then some bullet holes in the wall. And all the inking for these two sets of details on the wall is that sort of scratchy approach that both pushes the background further back, but also says sort of like rocky stone texture that's not, a perfectly smooth, shiny, like metal wall. It's not how you'd ink glass. It's not how you'd ink, the interior of a headquarters hallway. In Firefly's right hand, he has a detonator that has a wire, and he's looking off to his left, the right. he's really muscular. He's a really big, beefy guy in this pinup, and I'm reminded that Cronky has looked at Michael Golden, and I'm seeing some Michael Golden in the proportions here. And then thinking back to the inking for the Salvo panel, I'm thinking, oh yeah, some of that inking is Michael Golden style inking, and that is certainly a good artist to look at if you're going to look at an established comics artist.
And then Cronky, I think this is now a proper con sketch that was done at the con itself. Did this cool one of the Baroness as well.
So this is, again, this one is on a 301 sketch cover, right, which was a wraparound, this white thicker paper. And Cronky drew this as a wraparound. So the Baroness is almost completely on the front cover. She's waist up. She's holding a pistol in her right hand and has a big machine gun. Looks a little bit like a sniper rifle. Is this her classic machine gun in her left hand? She has a sort of a new kind of backpack. I can't see it very well, but it has a little sort of side pocket for like a coffee container or a bomb. And she's exhaling. I think where she is, it's cold, and she's exhaling steam. And so some of that sort of exhale breath over her hair is white out, where Cronky had inked her hair first and then whited out on top of it. She's looking back to the right. But then on the left, the back cover where her hand continues is some snow-capped mountains and a big fiery, smoky billow. And we don't see its source. Whatever is on fire, I think she shot the thing down or set the bomb, and she's getting away. Is sort of hidden between sets of mountains. Fun use of a back cover, because you can imagine some artists might say, this is how much I charge for Head and Shoulders. This is how much I charge for waist up, full figure, 2 figures, background. Or this is how much I charge for a front cover. This is how much I charge for a wraparound cover. And, maybe this is a case where Cronky started drawing and thought, oh, I need to draw onto the back cover too.
And it's nice when a sort of a blank is used like this, and you making use of the blank cover, but not making necessarily the blank cover essential, such that when it's folded and put in the bag, it can still sort of display, still in its own right, just the front without losing too much. So it's sort of done in a nice versatile way. So not a G.I. Joe cover artist now, and not one of the most recent 3 artists to work on G.I. Joe, but one of my favorite other sketches sort of revealed from the floor of Heroes Con is this one from Chris
Giarrusso,
who has does that sort of cartoony mini Marvels style, and is currently doing those homage covers to the Marvel Universe guidebooks. But this is a theme that he's worked on over a number of years for a number of different clients, which is a G.I. Joe cover interpretation in his own style. And this is the issue 61 cover recreation after Mike Zeck, which features Stalker, Snowjob, and Quick Kick on the front cover in a spotlight under fire, with Quick Kick wounded and soon to be on their way to a Barovian gulag. And I was one of the very first to get one from Grosso in as a cover recreation, and I got the issue 1 cover from him, and I've got that framed somewhere. And great to see more of these, because they're always an absolute joy to behold when I see them.
Giarrusso's cartooning is so appealing, but it's not just that it's cute and fun, it's that he can really draw and he can really ink. And I really appreciate the sort of surprise and tension of seeing his take on these established covers that we take for granted. You know, like the cover to G.I. Joe #1, except for when it was for sale at auction 15 years ago, and people were paying attention to this, you know, scan of the original for like a month, I just sort of take it for granted. You know, it's like the air, like, oh yeah, the cover to G.I. Joe 1, you know, red background tank guys. And, you know, you see it in back issue bins, or you see it online, or you see it as the cover, the variant cover for the most recent compendium. And to have someone redraw that in not just their style, but such a different style, sort of reminds me of what a great, I'll include this one as well. Any of these covers, you know, these Mike Zeck ones particularly, to see him recreate them in his style, there's this tension because they were drawn seriously originally and earnestly, and he's now drawing them earnestly. He's not making fun of them for them being, finger quotes, cute. He's not taking them down a peg, right? The fact that the heads are big and the, you know, hands and feet are a little big, it's like Bigfoot cartooning. It is just a different style, but he's playing it totally straight, right? It's not like there's a banana peel, or it's not like they're holding like squirt guns, right? They're not kids. These are grown-ups. He's just drawing them in his style. And to have this sort of collision of cute appealing with dire and serious, it sort of reminds me of just how serious the originals are, and then sort of back again, just what a good artist he is. Because, you know, like, I like how Jim Davis's many ghosts draw. I don't really need to see one of those pause artists who like draws Garfield uncredited. It would be fun, but like redraw this cover, like that's not a particular thing I'm looking for, because it would be fun. I don't think it would quite work. But this is, there's sort of a fine line here, and you know, Grosso's like funny stuff is funny, and his sort of serious stuff is serious, even though the art looks kind of, quote, funny.
Okay, so that, I think, is us pretty much done with looking at this issue and surrounding events. Next time on ARAH, the mission will continue on August the 6th, 2025. That is when issue 319 will be out, featuring Mindbender and Serpentor, if the cover is to be believed. And of course, we will be covering that issue shortly after it is out. Elsewhere going on in the G.I. Joe world, Transformers is coming. Wait, where are we? Coming out next week, I think. On sale July the 9th. Pay attention to Transformers, as there is a subplot with G.I. Joes in it at the moment that is playing through. So if you are a G.I. Joe fan and you want to know what's happening with G.I. Joe in the Energon universe, you do need to be reading Transformers too. Not
to get too much into whatever next episode we do where we talk about Transformers 22, but since this ad is in the back of Real American Hero 318, I'll just call it out. The cover to this month's Transformers issue 22 has some American soldiers on the cover, and I think it's safe to assume that they're G.I. Joe characters in the Energon universe, even if none of them jump out as very specific characters that we know. So, folks, if you're buying Energon universe G.I. Joe, do spend another $4 every month, and also buy Transformers. Or have your friend who gets them digitally steal them and send them to you or something. Stealing is bad. Don't steal. Go to your local library when Transformers Volume 4 paperback is released, and check it out there.
Oh, I heard, Tim, by the way, speaking of trade paperbacks, that typo from, that speech bubbles snafu from issue 314, where they were at that big vault door. Apparently that got fixed for the trade.
Nice. We do have... Nice. This is Volume 3 with Destro and Cobra Commander on the cover?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's...
Okay, you mean Real American Hero, not Energon Universe.
Real American Hero.
We do have that at my store in the news section. I have been traveling on behalf of G.I. Joe so much this month that I haven't had a proper moment to sit down and flip through it. But
Okay.
editor Alex Antone, if you're listening, and I don't know why you would be, you're far too busy to listen to this podcast. Thank you for fixing that typo.
And also,
and Diana Davis,
if
yes.
you
Diana,
played any hand in that, because
Diana,
you certainly would have heard us griping about it. So
if you pushed that along, it is appreciated. Now, if we can just go back to the issue where Serpentor died and Snake Eyes is talking back in 213, I think that was fixed. I don't know. I think that was fixed.
Well, maybe when they maybe when they do a compendium of that, they can just make that whole sequence better. Just make it better, please. I don't know what I'm looking for, but not what I got. Tim, maybe you could take a photo of that page and send it to me when you flick through it. Then we also have G.I. Joe issue 9 out on July the 16th. And Void Rivals on sale July the 23rd. And there's also other Energon Universe news that we are not going to be talking about here because the Energon Universe news is too big for this show. This is the Real American Hero Show. Join us next time when we talk about G.I. Joe issue 9, when we'll be covering the latest events in the Energon Universe.
Yes.
Tim, where can people find you when you're not talking to me about G.I. Joe?
YouTube.com/@AtomicAbe for informative and hilarious video essays, some very short, some very long, on television and film. My brick and mortar comic book store is in Somerville, Massachusetts. Somerville borders Cambridge and Boston. Hub Comics. And I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
And do please pay attention to arealamericanbook.com because Tim is taking a lot of time to write up about his con experiences at the moment. So as we speak at the moment, you have posted 2 installments of your Joe Fest experience, which once that is wrapped up, we'll then find out how DFW went, which is a new show for you, isn't it, Tim? You didn't go to that one last year.
Yes, though there were many familiar faces there, both in attendees and its tremendous guest list. Mark, you also wrote up your thoughts on your trip to Joe Fest. Ordinarily, the Talking Joe Patreon is for backers only. Did you make an exception? Is this one of those ones that's public?
I made this one public, yeah. So sometimes, most of the time on Patreon, I'll make it available just to paid Patreon members. Sometimes I'll make a post available to all Patreon members, including those who are on the free subscription. And sometimes, such as in this case, I will open it up to the general public. So I did a less verbose version of my Joe Fest experience.
Mark, you didn't spend 2 weeks writing down everything that you remembered happening at an entire convention?
I spent about half an hour.
That's lovely. I folks, you should definitely
do that instead.
If you're starting to read mine and you're thinking this is too long, I don't need to know what Tim had for lunch on the 3rd day.
Speaking of which,
read Mark's.
I did spend a lot of time talking about what I ate. So big thanks to
that's the fun of travel, right? Buying too many toys and having delicious food.
Mm-hmm. Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2. This one is in a fridge with an arrow stick out of his eye for some reason. Infinite Entertainment, Patrick, and latest Patreon member, Gary V. They are all getting early access to episodes and a warm glow whenever they think about the good that they are doing, paying off my bills to run this thing. But I'll peek behind the curtains here. It isn't paying for my airfare to Augusta, Georgia. We're not doing that well,
folks. If you want to sponsor our appearance at your table at a G.I. Joe convention in the coming year where you are selling things, Mark and I are for sale. We can be bought.
I'm not sure I physically can get across to America that many more times, but you know, make the offer. You know, if it's a big enough amount of money, I am for sale. I would like to, you know, it'd be really lovely to like sponsor a guest or like an artist or someone like something like that. That would be a really cool idea, but you know, that's expensive. So yes, aside from that, Talking Joe can be found at talkingjoe.co.uk. It feels like only a few weeks ago, because it was only a few weeks ago that I was celebrating the fact that our sub count on YouTube had ticked over to 900. And as we speak, at time of recording, we are on about 977. Oh, crikey. I've just refreshed it since a few minutes ago. It's now on 980. It's gone up. It's gone up another 3 in the last...
When we
hour.
Mark has told me that when we reach 1,000 subscribers,
Oh, dear.
he's going to post a video where he takes off his clothes and puts on a ghillie suit in a way that sort of isn't particularly sexual. He's just being a professional. But if you feel like looking at it in a sexy way, that's up to you. This may just be a very short video, but get 20 of your friends to subscribe. And Mark has definitely promised that this is absolutely happening.
But yes, if you're watching this and have not yet subscribed, please do, and help us tick over that big 1,000 mark. That'll be quite a thrill when that happens. And I think with all that said and done, Tim, I think we need to close out, but you just need us to remind the listeners of one vital thing that they need to hold in the forefront of their mind until they hear from us again. And that thing is...
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast!
Laters. Thanks for watching.